Hello, I'm now at Callanwolde in our temporary glazing setup. And yesterday, when I left off last, I was talking about decorating on soft clay, leather hard clay, wet clay, and now today I want to talk just a little bit about decorating on bisque. So this pot has a little texture on it, not a lot, hopefully this will work, but I'm putting a little black engobe on the textured areas and just giving it a second to dry. It doesn't take long, it pretty much instantaneously dries. And then I'm going to wipe it off with a sponge, and that will enhance the textured areas, I'm hoping. Okay, so take a sponge and wipe it off. If your texture is nice and deep, this shows up even better. The only pot that I had available to show was this one today, so it's not got a real deep texture, but you can get the idea, because when I wipe away the black engobe, you can see the textured lines. I hope you can see that. We're under a blue tent, so it may be a little dark down here. And then the next thing I'm going to, the other thing I would like to talk about in terms of glazing or decorating bisque is you can do some things with wax resist if you want to. You can wax some areas with the hot wax, but you got to do that quickly. So you can use the cold wax. We have two different kinds of wax, cold wax and hot wax. The hot wax is really good for just dipping your pot in and getting wax on the bottom. The cold wax is better for decorating or doing specific block out areas that you might not want glaze on. So you can use engobes, you can use wax, and then I wanted to remind you of this pot that we talked about earlier. This could the engobes could be painted on to the bisque as well. And then it's ideally best if you fire it again. But it can, if you're careful, you can just dip it in a clear glaze and come right back out. So when you get ready to wax the bottoms, and all your pots have to have wax on the bottom, because you can't put them on the kiln shelf without a clean bottom. So I would suggest that you either quickly brush off any possible dust, or you can even dip them in some water and get all the dust off of them. But if you do the dip method, you do need to give them a little time to dry. So the amount of time to dry is probably about at least 20 minutes, I would say, and an hour or two would probably be better. So I'm going to take my pots and dip them in this wax. Now the wax has to be hot, but you don't want to leave it on too long. Actually, I've already waxed that one. So let's start with this one. We just put it in and take it out. Let the drips come off the bottom. If you turn your pot upside down too quickly, then you can have wax running down the side. Alright, so then we'll put this bowl in there. Do all your pieces at once if you can. And this pot had a foot on it, so it missed, let me see if you can see that, it missed some spots. So I have a brush here. If I'm very careful, I can go back in and fill those areas that got missed, but I have to be careful. If I drip wax down the side of the pot, then the only way to get that wax off is to bisque fire it, to burn the wax off. So I'm being very careful. That's done, and then I have this last one. Dip it in, take it out, let it drip, and then you're ready to glaze. When you're ready to choose your glazes, you'll have some test tiles to look at, and currently, for this outdoor glazing situation, you have some test tile photographs that we've sent you. And it's a little harder to see than in real life, but it's the best we can do for right now. So you've got to choose first of all, you've got to choose is whether or not you want to do cone 6 or cone 10. and or salt. So if you're going to do cone 10, which I'm going to do today, because I want to stay in one place and not be moving all over the place to film this, but I can't use some cone 10 and some cone 6. I've got to use all cone 10 glazes. If I put a cone 10 glaze and a cone 6 glaze on the same pot, then we will, as we load it into the kiln, we'll put it on the reject shelf. So, because if it's in the if you put a cone 10 glaze in the cone 6 kiln, it's not going to melt. And if you put a cone 6 glaze in the cone 10 kiln, it's going to melt too much and run off. So I hope I made it clear. You're trying to choose one of those two kinds of glazes. And for the salt kiln, you usually use mostly the cone 6 glazes. However, there are a few of them that work okay, like Tomoku works okay in the salt, and maybe one or two others, but those should be on the test tiles for you to see. I would suggest you put down some newspaper before you start glazing so that you can clean up really easily and clean up nice and quick. And know that as you decide which pot is going to be in what color, you go ahead and fill out a firing slip. That's what I do. I'll go ahead and do them earlier so that I kind of remember what pot that I want. I do all my planning first. The firing slips are different every quarter, different color. This is the ones from winter quarter, and the summer classes will be a different color. They just have not put those out yet. But I wanted to go ahead and get this demonstration going, so I'm using the blue slips today. Each quarter, like I said, will have a different color slip for us to help keep up with which pots are which. So I'm going to do this pot right here. I'm thinking I'm going to dip the entire pot, one dip, into the Tomoku glaze. And then later I'm going to put some gem slip decorations on top. So I want you to know that you've got to put your first and last name. Actually, your last name is the most important. So for me, I could put M. Cook, because I think that would be enough, because we file these by your last name. Please try to make your handwriting nice and easy for us to read. You wouldn't believe how many times we look at these things and wonder what it is we're trying to read. So print carefully. Last name is very important. The date, the quarter should be on there for you. Tell me what kind of pot it is. This is a bowl. And then I have to say which glaze I'm going to use. So I'm going to put Tomoku and gem slip on there. And I'm going to put it in the cone 10 kiln, and then I have to put the measurements. This is the measuring area, and there are little lines that tell you how tall it is. There are lines that are a little hard to see that tell you how wide it is, and then there are lines over on this wall that tell you how deep it is. Okay. So what you have to do is go to the nearest line. So this pot is 1, 2, 3 inches tall. So I put 3 inches there on that part. And then coming this way, it's 5 inches wide, and because it's a round pot, it's 5 inches deep. Okay, now if it were a mug or something that has a different width than depth, then you just have to indicate that. So then you take your 25, I go 5 times 5 is 25 times 3, 75. So this bowl is 75 cubic inches. One thing that I probably shouldn't have said over there is that if this bowl had been 3.5 inches tall, then you should put it at 4. You got to round up, not down. Okay, and we don't use the 3.5. So if it's 3.5 inches tall, make it 4 inches tall. All right, so I'm going to dip this pot in a glaze called Tomoku, which hopefully will break nicely over my little indented lines here and make for a slightly different color there. We'll see. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you won't. One thing I probably should say about glazing is there are no guarantees. And you really have to play with it for a while to start getting the idea of how it really works. So if you put a pot in and you leave the pot in the glaze too long, it will suck up too much glaze. And if you get too much glaze on your pot, this is someone's pot that the glaze was way too thick and it ran down and got all over the bottom. Okay, so this white surface that you see here is the kiln wash that was on the shelf. Otherwise, this pot would have been fused to the shelf and we would have had to take a hammer and a chisel to get it off. So glaze too thick is not a good thing. If you, while you're glazing, you end up with a lot of glaze right near the foot, if it's really bad, you should wash it off and start over. But if it's just a little thick down there, you can take a green scrubby and kind of thin it out a little bit and try to get the glaze thinned out just a little bit. Be careful, because you can sand too much. Or you can take a metal rib and just kind of slice off some of it and thin it out a little bit. But typically, you don't want to have, when you're glazing, you don't want to put it down like this so that all the glaze goes to the bottom. You want to dry it upside down so the glaze goes the other way. Okay, so since I'm gonna put this pot in the whole pot into moku, I'm going to use these tongs, and I can actually hold on to this way and dip it into the bucket without having to get fingerprints on it. Because if I hold it like this and dip it, then I would have a fingerprint right here, which you may enjoy having. People use their fingerprints as part of their design sometimes. Now, whenever you start to glaze, you need a whisk and you need to stir up the glaze really, really well. We try to keep the glazes stirred in the morning. Most every day in the morning, the glazes get stirred. That doesn't mean they don't settle out throughout the day. And all the really good, heavy ingredients settle to the bottom. And some of those heavy ingredients are the ones that make the glaze really pretty. So when you start to glaze, I'm going to do the tomoku first. I'm going to stir it up really well. Okay, and then take your whisk, lay it down on top of the lid, and take your tongs. If your pot's real thin, you can actually puncture a hole in it, so be careful about that. So I'm going to go in and out. So you notice I didn't stay in very long, and I'm holding it upside down for the glaze to drip off. And then I'm going to hold it from the bottom and let go with the tongs. I can't touch the top or I'll leave a fingerprint. So I have to put it down carefully, sort of let it slide off the bottom of my hands. It's dry down inside there a little bit. There we go. So then I'm going to let that sit there for a little while and dry. So next thing, I'm finished with the tomoku, so I'm putting the top back on and I'm going to wash the whisk. Next thing I'm going to do, let's pretend like I've measured all of these pots. So I'm not going to do that demonstration on each pot. So all these pots have been measured. And now I'm going to mix up, I'm going to do this bowl. You got to make sure your hands are clean. I'm going to do this bowl in Ferguson yellow and green celadon. So I'm going to start with the Ferguson yellow. And you'll see that some of these glazes are easier to stir than others. The truth is I stirred all of them a few minutes ago, but the tomoku had already settled a lot. So if it feels a little bit stiff in the bottom or a little sludgy down there, really work that up. The Ferguson feels pretty good, like it's not that settled out. So what I'm going to do on this bowl is I'm going to dip half of it in the Ferguson yellow and half of it in the green celadon. So I'm going to go in and out. Drip off the glaze again before you put it down so that it all runs up high. Okay, put that down. And then I'm going to wash my whisk. And now I'm going to go into the green celadon. And I'm going to use it on the other side of that bowl. and I'm stirring it up really well. I had a student, several times this has happened. Students will come to me and they'll say, Martha, what happened to the glaze on this pot? And I look at it and I'll say, it looks like the glaze is really, really thin. And they'll say, well, I dipped it in as long as you told me to. And I said, did you stir the glaze really well? And they'll say, yeah, I stirred it. But I have seen actually several times where the glaze is not stirred well enough, and so it makes the glaze look like it's really, really thin. I'm only saying this because it is really important to stir your glazes. Okay, so put your whisk there. Then I'm going to take this dries pretty fast, and it's already ready for me to touch. But I want to overlap, so I want the green to come, this green red looking glaze is green. So don't look at the color of the glaze to decide the color, because it changed dramatically when they're in the kiln. This glaze is yellow, this glaze is green. So I'm going in, and I actually overlapped. And I'm sure you may not be able to see this in the video, but there's a little strip where the two glazes overlap each other, and that will make actually a different color. Alright, so I'm going to put that down, let it dry, and I'm going to take this mug, just for ease, I'm going to use the same two colors. But this time, I'm going to pour green on the inside, and then pour it back out. So, I need a little scoop up some of the glaze, pour it inside, put that on the lid, and then dump it and pour it. As I pour it out, I twist around, and that will actually glaze the whole interior of the cup. And I want the green to come down just past that line a little bit. So now I'm going to dip it this way. Kind of sling it a little bit to get some of the glaze off. Alright, so I'm going to let that dry a second. Pour the rest of this back in. Put my whisk here. Put my lid back on. Make sure you always put the right lid on the right bucket. I'm going to go wash this. One thing that I forgot to bring with me today was a towel. So I went and got a paper towel. But bring a little towel, a little hand towel. It's great to have that to dry your hands on in between things. Alright, so now this same mug, the top is already dry, and I just dipped it. I'm going to dip the bottom part. See, the engobes are still showing. When I dip it into the Ferguson yellow, I have to do it this way a little bit, but try not to just make a huge thick area of glaze around the bottom. I double dipped that because it looked a little thin. Sometimes the glazes can get thinned out too much, but normally Ferguson yellow needs one dip. Okay, so I'm going to put that down. Oh my goodness, when I put that down, I accidentally chipped the glaze on the lip of that pot. So what I need to do to touch that up is get a little bit more green celadon. And yes, I'm stirring it again because I don't want it to be settled. So let's see if this is dry enough for me to hold. Yeah. Okay. So see, it chipped off right here, it chipped off right here, and it chipped off right there. So I'm just going to touch it. You can do this with a brush or your finger. I'm just doing a little dab. It's not like you want to paint it on, you want to dab it on. Actually, that was a good little accident to happen, so you can see how to fix that.